This presentation is all about topic 4. Topic 4 is all about production, and it's the shortest of the 5 topics, but still really important for your exam. One thing I want to explain the difference between, first of all, in this topic is the difference between the word production and the word productivity. Production is making goods and services. So it's combining factors of production to produce goods and services. Productivity measures how efficiently we're producing our goods and services. So if production levels increase without resources increasing with them, clearly we have more productivity. That means we have more efficiency in a business place. That in turn should mean that business can produce more without increasing resources, which means that costs should fall, which means that they can potentially raise their competitiveness as a business, maybe lower their prices, which would help out customers, or in turn increase their profit levels. Now, when a business produces things, it has to consider its total costs. These are the sum of fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that do not change with output. So no matter how many products a business produces, the fixed cost will remain the same. So for example, a classroom, if we were renting a classroom at £100 an hour, if we had 10 people in that room or 20 people in that room, that cost remains the same. A variable cost is a cost that changes with output. So for example, if we go back to our example, if you imagine each student in that classroom receives a booklet when they enter of that lesson's notes. If we only have 10 students in the class, we only pay for 10 sets of notes. 20 people, clearly we have to produce an extra 10, so the cost will increase with more bums on seats in the classroom. Now what we also need to consider is average total costs. We work these out by total costs divided by output. So we work out the total cost divided by how much we produced to work out our average total cost. So if we take an example that our classroom incurs fixed costs of £20 an hour, and the variable costs work out at £1 per student, and we have 20 students, our total costs would be £40. To work out this in our equation, we would have £40 divided by an output of 20 students to get us average total costs of £2. If we were to then increase this to 40 students, clearly fixed cost rate at £20, we have an additional £20 variable costs to get £60 total costs. This times 60 divided by 40 students will give us an average total cost of £1.50 per student. Now what we can do, we can graph costs onto a curve. So what I'm going to look at now is output on the horizontal axis and costs on the vertical. And what we see is that average total costs take on a U shape. So what we can see is originally, as output increases, average total costs start to fall. They then reach their lowest point, and then beyond a certain output, average total costs start to increase again. Now these 3 points are key for your exam. As output increases and average costs start to fall, we are achieving economies of scale. When we've taken full advantage of economies of scale, we reach our lowest average costs. This is the productively efficient point. Beyond this point, we start to see this economies of scale kicking in. Now to make this easy to understand, I want to apply these 3 different concepts to a particular business. Let's imagine we're applying this to a supermarket. Now economies of scale that you need to know for your exam are financial, technical managerial, external, and the other one I just forgotten, but I remember now, production. These first four are what we call internal economies of scale, things that a business can do as they increase their output to lower their average total cost. The most obvious one to get your head round, I think, is production. Here we're looking at bulk buying. So for example, think about your supermarket. Because they sell such large quantities of stock, when they go to their suppliers, they can negotiate discounts for buying stock in large quantity. That might mean they can buy a can of beans or a can of pop, bag of crisps far cheaper than your corner shop can. Therefore, their buying costs are a lot lower. Another economy of scale that you should really understand is managerial. Large businesses with big output can employ specialist managers to do things. These managers will be able to devise better ways of doing things. Again, that means they become more efficient, more productive, so their costs again begin to fall. Technical. Large firms can buy new technology, invest in new technology. This again can reduce costs. So for example, supermarkets have recently introduced self-scan checkouts. No need for checkout systems, clearly that's saving money. Small corner shop would not be able to achieve that. Financial economies of scale. Big firm, big output, big profits, very small risk for a bank. They will lend money out to big supermarkets at a far lower interest rate than a small company due to the risk that a small firm will create. This means that big firms can access cheaper finance than small companies can. External economy of scale is something that happens outside of a business that will still enable a business to lower its costs. So for example, for our supermarket, they have to transport goods around the country. If a lorry manufacturer, for example, was to be able to devise a more efficient vehicle that used less petrol, our supermarket could buy that, lower their average costs. Something they haven't done, but something they can benefit from. Now, PE stands for productively efficient. That means you are producing at lowest possible average cost. You cannot get any better than that. You are producing as efficiently as you can. That will potentially mean that you can charge customers a really low price for the products or enjoy a really high profit margin. Now, beyond a certain point, we start to achieve this economies of scale. This is when average costs start to rise again. Now, some things you need to sort of understand here are communication problems, coordination problems, and industrial action. And what I mean by this is, as the business starts to become too big, taking on board more and more workers, it becomes very difficult to communicate with all those different staff. That will ultimately mean that some staff receive the wrong information. Maybe you've had to hire lots of extra supervisors at additional costs to make sure that people understand what's going on. But clearly a communication breakdown will mean that staff do the wrong thing, make mistakes, which cost money to put right. Coordination problems. If you've got a massive workforce due to a massive output, it's very difficult to make sure all them staff know exactly what they're supposed to do. That might mean that staff are not duplicating each other's work, again making mistakes. It may be difficult to supervise that number of staff, which means that some staff might not work as hard as they should do. Again, that starts to raise costs. Industrial action, strikes, staff being unhappy. As businesses grow, staff on the shop floor starts to become very distant from the management. It's very difficult to keep a large number of people happy in a business. As staff become less happy with what's happening in the business, there's more chance of them going on strike. That might mean that you've got additional costs of dealing with that strike, getting them people back to work, hiring temporary staff while those people aren't working for you. All very, very costly things. And that is topic 4.